Okay, welcome to the training everyone. Come in, sit down. Yep, just find a seat. Just find a seat, we'll be starting in a moment. Okay, so we're just waiting for the last few people. Yep, no, we can wait for him. He's the boss after all. On the phone? Okay, well, we'll start. We'll start with that. Okay, thanks for coming to the training. I'm Dave Vane from Data Trust, and I should mention that this presentation is being recorded. So, who are Data Trust? Data Trust are a fictional cyber security company, and this is a unit for a New South Wales TAFE Cyber Security course. Neither Data Trust nor Indigo Healthcare mentioned in this presentation are real companies. So if you've wandered in from the internet, you're more than welcome to stay. This is about cyber security after all. We might cover some topics that you're interested in. If you do watch the presentation, give me a big thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. If you do have any security issues, then I recommend you contact a security company such as Sophos. Sophos in particular are very good. I have a lot of experience with their products. The guys are really friendly. I'd like to thank these companies for supplying a great deal of information for this presentation. I have no connection to any of them, other than I use Sophos products, obviously, as I mentioned. But I'm not getting anything from these companies. Sophos haven't even given me so much as a promotional t-shirt. Sophos and Trend Micro are both security companies that provide a lot of information in the area of cyber defense. Both have blogs which are very informative. Deviant Olem is a physical penetration tester based in the United States. He has graciously given me permission to lift some of the video from one of his presentations. He was presenting at the Orlando B-Sides seminar. About the only way I could find to contact him was through Twitter, and this is his Twitter picture. I think the face mask is an acknowledgement of COVID-19 and the situation that we're all going through all over the world at the moment. If you would like more information about physical penetration and how you can protect your physical perimeter, then I do recommend that you reach out to Deviant or start with viewing some of his videos on YouTube. So in the presentation today, we'll be having a quick look at some current trends in cybersecurity, some of the threats, types of attack, physical security as I mentioned, and we'll finish up with Internet of Things and the information about you that is publicly available and why this represents the death of security, because who doesn't like a good bit of hyperbole? And we should have you out in about an hour. If you have any questions, please ask them as we go. Don't wait until the end. So some of the developing trends that we're seeing in cyber attacks at the moment are around COVID-19, because COVID-19 is in the news everywhere at the moment. And in fact, at the time of this presentation, in Victoria, the second wave of COVID-19 infections is just starting to gather a head of steam. So COVID-19 is in the news at the moment, and as a result, you're predisposed towards falling for a cyber attack that is based around that vector. So by way of example, there's a company in the UK which was recently attacked. Under the cover of COVID-19, all of the IT staff were working from home and nobody detected the attack until it was too late. So that's one way that COVID-19 can be used as cover for cyber intrusion. Other ways are there's an increase in spam or phishing attacks which are referencing COVID-19. For example, there's a COVID-19 tracker app available which offers to alert you to any COVID-19 outbreaks in your area. So of course you're going to download that and install it. You need to disable your security so it'll run. You do that because you downloaded the app, right? The trouble is it's malware, and while it's running in the background, it's completely encrypting your phone, so you end up with a ransomware attack. And we're all working from home now, so there is also an increase in home delivery scams where phishing email is being sent to people with attachments that look like consignment notes from companies saying, look, we weren't able to deliver your package, please open this consignment note, or please go to this website and confirm your details. And of course, these are all extortion attempts. They'll either lock up your machine or they'll install some other malware on your machine. When there's a red hot item in the news, it pays to be very suspicious about these things. There's also an uptick in spam and phishing material based around the Black Lives Matter movement. As in this picture from Paul Ducklin at Sophos Security, attachments are being sent to people saying, fill in this survey and let your government know that Black Lives Matter. And of course, it's not a survey, it's malware. The Internet of Things is a new development. It's been gathering steam for a few years now, and the hackers have started to use that as a vector for attacking your environment. There's the ever common threat of phishing, of course. Phishing never goes away. Something else that security companies are noticing is the increase in social media-based attacks. For example, if you're on Facebook, as so many people are in these times of social distancing, everybody wants to feel connected, so there are now surveys going around saying, tell me 10 things I don't know about you, and then they list things like, where did your parents meet? What was your first pet's name? What's your favourite movie? And these are typically questions that you would use on a website to set up the password reset facility. So if you forget your password on a website, you can answer a couple of secret questions that nobody else knows about you and have a password reset link sent to your email. So of course, if I am a hacker and I have somehow compromised your email, and now I know what city your parents met in and the name of your first pet, I can now go to the website and have your password reset. I don't even need to try to decrypt your password because the information that you've put out on the internet has allowed me to reset your password. So the Australian government is now reporting that there's a large and persistent cyber attack occurring in Australia at the moment, with many Australian companies being hacked by a foreign power. As these attacks are discovered and analysed, it seems that a lot of the techniques and vectors that are being used are in fact old or existing attacks and should have been patched already. So clearly there are companies out there that are not keeping their systems patched. They're not keeping their security up to date. And obviously people are not taking due care. So people are downloading attachments and following links without exercising a reasonable amount of caution. Okay, so let's talk about threats for a moment. And hackers. Who are hackers? Well, a hacker could be an individual, somebody sitting in their room by themselves, just hacking your system to see if they can, to big note themselves in their group of friends. These are typically what we'd think of as script kiddies. With the tools that are available on the internet now, even a casual script kiddie can do some serious damage to your network if you're not keeping your security patches up to date. And then there are groups and organisations, or perhaps loose confederations of individuals along the lines of the hacking group Anonymous that we see in the news all the time. There doesn't appear to be any real leadership or direction with Anonymous. It's kind of, as a group, they agree that they're going to attack a certain target. So the targets for Anonymous tend to be more socially based or ideologically based. So for example, you might see attacks from Anonymous to do with Black Lives Matter or equality in the movie industry. And then there are governments and other state-based agencies which are very professionally organised and potentially could be an extension of a nation's military. So as I mentioned earlier, Australia is now saying that they are being attacked by a foreign power, and it's reasonable to assume that this is going to be another country that has some geopolitical objective, and attacking Australia's infrastructure is going to help them further that objective. But that's happening at a completely different level. It's geopolitical. So you might ask, what is the motivation of a hacker? Well, as I mentioned, if it's an individual, they might just be doing it for lols, and you happen to be an easy target for them because you haven't patched your systems, or you have followed a link in some spam. There may be geopolitical objectives that an organisation or a state is trying to reach. According to a study from Varonis in 2020, over 90% of hacking attacks are simply to separate you from your money. And typically this will take the form of some kind of ransomware where you're prevented from accessing your data. What we're also seeing now with ransomware is that there's more than one attack gets downloaded with that ransomware. So if you do, for example, have backups and choose to just recover all of your data, then the second attack may have been to exfiltrate all of your data so the hacker can then threaten to release any sensitive information they find onto the internet, which provides encouragement to the company to pay the ransom and get their data back that way, rather than simply recover from backup. Okay, so what methods do they use? The methods are many and varied, but typically the ones that we will see are the phishing attacks, where it's just spam email that's sent out into the internet. Millions of emails are sent out into the internet in the hope that someone will reply and fall for the scam. And it only takes a very, very small percentage of people to follow a link or download an attachment for that scam to be successful. So beyond phishing, there's spear phishing. Spear phishing is where the hacker knows some information about you and can customize their attack to suit you. So that's where your Facebook quizzes come in, or any other information that you might put out there in social media. For example, if they know that you work for Indigo Healthcare, then they may craft an email that looks like it comes from another Indigo Healthcare worker, and you're more likely to follow a link, open an attachment. Beyond that, whale phishing seems to be a new term that somebody's coined, where they've taken spear phishing and now they are specifically trying to get a very high value target within the company. So that's typically director or C-level people within the organisation. So I put this photo in because I think this is how hackers like to think of themselves. They're sort of this shadowy organisation, or perhaps they've got some high-minded motivation and they're trying to make some social point. But generally speaking, 90% of the time, a hacker is only there to separate you from your money. So let's talk about types of attack. Broadly, they fall into two categories. There are untargeted attacks and targeted attacks. Now, an untargeted attack is typically what we would think of as phishing, where 1 million email notes are sent out. Essentially there are invitations to come and be hacked, put out into the world, and that could be through email attachments or documents that are infected with malware or a web link. It could also be a freebie in the form of a USB stick that you find. Typically these have been found in car parks. It looks like somebody's just dropped their USB stick while they've been getting out of their car. But really, the USB stick is infected with malware, and as soon as you put it in your computer's infected. There are also wireless network attacks. The way wireless networks work is once you've connected to a wireless access point, all of your information is being sent across the air, and anybody with the right equipment can hear that. It's very much like a radio station. A radio station broadcasts from an antenna, and anyone with a radio can listen to that signal. Wireless network cards in your computers are supposed to drop packets that aren't specifically addressed to your computer. However, you can configure your wireless access card to enter what's known as promiscuous mode, and it will just listen to all of the information that it hears. So by way of example, there's an attack known as a man-in-the-middle attack, where a hacker will sit in a public space pretending to be a wireless access point. And then you go into that space, see the access point, connect to it, then all of your internet traffic is routed through the hacker's machine. Now, if you happen to be doing your online banking, that's probably a very bad thing. The other broad category of attacks are targeted attacks. And this is, as I mentioned before, things like spear phishing, where it's still phishing, they're still trying to get you to download some malware onto your machine, but they're being more sophisticated about it, and they're crafting their communications with you to look legitimate. And it's the internet. One thing is connected to another. I take some information that I scrape off your Facebook page, and I use that to get access to your phone number, and I use that to get access to your email, and from that I can get access to your bank account, or whatever it is. One thing leads to another. I should mention that phishing is a very successful technique and will never go away. It is, after all, just another way of performing a scam. You might not think that people are silly enough to fall for that sort of thing anymore, but in preparing this presentation, I was looking online for a recent example of some phishing, and the first scam example that I came across was just back in April 2020, so 2 months ago, where a guy in the States lost tens of thousands of dollars when a hacker contacted him via SMS and asked him for assistance cashing checks, because the bank wouldn't cash his checks for him, and would this man be an intermediary, and he could keep a slice of it for his troubles. So never underestimate the power of greed. Do people still fall for these techniques? Absolutely. As an example of a spear phishing scam, there's currently an attack going around where a hacker gets into your email and then interjects as you in a financial transaction you currently have running. For example, you might be selling your house. The hacker contacts the lawyer and says, look, I've just changed my bank account details. Please send the settlement to this bank account number. Now, the lawyer might want you to fill in a form, but if they email that form to you, then obviously that's a problem. Or if they call you and the hacker has also had your phone number ported to another service, you have very little hope of stopping that transaction. And then, as mentioned earlier, there's whale phishing, which is very sophisticated spear phishing, where the hacker is really drilling down and targeting a very high value target. Okay, so it's time to stop listening to me talk and let's watch a video from Sophos. This is a couple of years old, this video, and it talks about some ransomware called Locky ransomware. Now, Sophos and other security companies have been able to block this threat for several years. However, there are still unpatched systems out there which will still be vulnerable to this attack. Now, let's watch the video.
Let's take a look at some of the user's data on this computer. Here we can see the normal type of documents you would expect. We also have a USB memory stick with some backup copies. Next, we're going to take a look at the user's email. Here we can see they have one new email with a subject of notification status of your delivery. Okay, let's take a closer look. The email starts "Dear customer" and explains a delivery has been missed. Luckily, the email includes a parcel.zip attachment with the details. We all like getting parcels, even ones we do not remember ordering, so let's double click on the attachment and select Open. We are now presented with a file called undelivered-parcel and an ID number. The file has the extension .doc, which we may recognize as a familiar Microsoft Office file. However, we can see that the file type is actually listed as a Windows script file, and the icon looks a bit odd. However, we don't want to miss out on getting our delivery, so let's double click on the file. That's strange, nothing has happened. Well, something has happened. In the background, this malicious file has started contacting the malware writer's command and control server, and it's downloading the malware payload, in this case, the Locky ransomware. Okay, something just happened. What is all this that's opened on my screen? This doesn't look good at all. It's a ransomware note saying all my files are encrypted? Let's close this. But wait, here it is again, this time in picture form. Let's get rid of this and check my data is okay. Oh no, this doesn't look good at all. What's this strange file? Another ransomware note? My file names have changed and the icons are missing. Let me try and open one. The computer says it cannot open it, but let's force it to open in Notepad. That's definitely not good. My files have been encrypted. Luckily, I have other files backed up on my USB stick. Oh no, they're encrypted as well. And now my boss is calling to say that encrypted files are appearing all over the servers? Now that we have seen what a ransomware attack looks like from the victim's perspective, we'll look at how Sophos protects you from this type of attack. Now in scenario 2, we will begin turning on Sophos protection, starting with the ransomware protection included in Sophos Intercept X. So this time we start disabling the different layers of protection, but we leave ransomware detection enabled. Now we will take a look at our files on the computer, and as you can see we have started again, so our files are back to normal. We will also change our view option to show extensions of known file types, as this will help later. The backups on the USB drive are also back to normal. Before we start the attack again, we would like to highlight that the malware and spam email used in this video are real, and that at the time of recording these files had not been seen by Sophos before. No new protection was created in advance to block these. They were caught automatically by our products. We start by opening the user's email again. Here we can see the same exact email as before, and we also open the zip file again. Now though we can see the .wsf extension of the file, because we changed our view to show extensions of known file types. Unfortunately, most users do not have this set, so all they see is the fake .doc extension. Some users may also just display the file icons without any detail, and they will not see the type information column either. We double click on the file and the attack starts again. The file we run is known as the downloader and is designed to pull down a malware payload and run it. In this case, we know it's pulling down the Locky ransomware, and in a few seconds it's going to start encrypting our files. This time, however, the malware is blocked by Sophos, and we see a file called a1.exe has been detected as ransomware. A Sophos clean scan is started automatically, and in a short while the malicious file will be safely removed. Now let's look at our data again. This time we can see the ransomware protection has stopped the malware and our files are safe.
As I said before the video, Locky ransomware has been around for several years and shouldn't be a threat anymore. However, in April this year, Trend Micro noticed that there's been a huge uptick in the amount of Locky ransomware being distributed via email. And that seems to be coming down with the Herbalife tag. So if you get an attachment talking about a delivery of Herbalife products, then that is Locky ransomware. In fact, if you get that email, then your antivirus software is not up to date, because it should be able to detect that and block it before it gets to your mailbox. Since connections to wireless access points broadcast packets for anyone to listen into, there have been some efforts put into the encryption of that signal. There have been various versions of the security protocols, starting with WEP or WEP, moving through to WPA2, and eventually on to WPA3, which is due to be released anytime. WEP or WEP stands for Wired Equivalent Privacy, and of the protocols is the oldest. It's no longer supported and is no longer considered secure. If you're using WEP at home, you should change. And if you're using WEP at work, you should get your IT people to change, as this protocol is hard to configure and easy to defeat. WPA is a newer protocol, but is still reasonably unsecure, and as such it should not be used if you can avoid it. WPA2 is the current wireless security protocol that is recommended for use. Switching to WPA2 may require a hardware upgrade, but if you can switch to it, then it is certainly recommended that you do. Using WPA2 may require a hardware upgrade, but if you can, you should be on WPA2 at least. I say at least because at the time of this presentation, WPA3 is due anytime. WPA3 has native encryption and built-in VPN connectivity, which encrypts your connection all the way from your endpoint through to the website you're connecting to. Yes, sir, a question. Yep. Right, okay. So the question is, how do hackers get onto your wireless network? Okay, so I don't think your question is referring to a man-in-the-middle attack. In that situation, you connect to a hacker's access point thinking it's a valid access point, but in fact they're just listening to all of your traffic. So if it's encrypted, it's still passing through there. I think what you're referring to is how a hacker can steal your credentials and log on to the access point or your network themselves. So one way they can achieve this is by simply listening to your traffic as you talk to the access point. Because as mentioned previously, if you're connecting wirelessly, then you're broadcasting all of your traffic to anyone who cares to listen to it, anyone who has the required hardware to be able to promiscuously listen to packets that aren't destined for their computer. So what they can do is take advantage of the initial security handshake between your computer and the wireless access point to get some credentials that will allow them to subsequently log on to that access point. And they do this by listening to your connection and then disconnecting you. They do that through a denial of service attack. They just flood your machine drops the connection and then tries to re-establish it. And when it re-establishes that connection, the hacker is listening to all of your packets. They see your credentials as they're passed to the access point, and they capture those, just write them into a file for later use. And then they can leave. They can go away back to their home and spend as much time as they need to crack those credentials. And by doing that at a remote location, they're not triggering any kind of intrusion detection system or setting off any alarms. Then, Once they've cracked your credentials, they can return to wherever it was that you were connecting to the access point and replay that using your credentials to connect to the access point. Does that make sense? Good, okay. Another common and easily performed attack that hackers execute is a man-in-the-middle attack. In this situation, a hacker sets themselves up as a wireless access point with a name that you're looking for, like free Wi-Fi. You make your connection to the access point. The hacker passes your connection information on to the internet, so you don't even see the hacker at all, but they're seeing you and all of your credentials and information that you're sending back and forth to the internet. So depending where you are, that might be your banking because you've connected in a shopping centre. Now you might see free internet being offered at a shopping centre where it's completely reasonable to assume that there'll be free Wi-Fi, or potentially another public space like an airport. And in these situations, a hacker simply configures their wireless network cards to broadcast the same name as the free Wi-Fi network. And if the signal from their access point is stronger than the signal from the real access point, then your computer will connect to it. And then they've got you. They can monitor all of your traffic without you having any idea that your connection is not secure. So why does this work on us? Well, technically, it's a very easy attack. From a social engineering point of view, who doesn't love free stuff? We see a free wireless internet connection. So rather than use our own internet connection through our telco, which we have to pay for, we can just connect to this free Wi-Fi and pick that up. And as mentioned, unfortunately, depending on where you are, you might be connecting to your bank, or you might be logging on to your frequent flyer airline points account, checking your email, or any other number of websites that you would prefer people didn't have your credentials for. What these pictures are illustrating is how a fake or rogue access point mimics the legitimate access point. The devices then connect to it because it's giving out a stronger signal. I think in this picture the researchers were showing that the signals to the real access point can even be disrupted, which forces a reconnection of the client. Most users wouldn't even notice something like that, or if they did notice, they'd just grumble and say, well, I lost my signal momentarily, but it's back now. This second picture is of a very sophisticated access point that was discovered by security services outside The Hague. Apparently it was set up by Russian hackers, so there's your state-based actors. It was just sitting in the car park outside The Hague listening to all of the wireless traffic. You can see that the setup is comprehensive. It's pretty much like a cell phone tower packed into the boot of a car there, and the antenna was just covered with a coat. Question, yes. How did they discover it? I think it was as simple as the car was pretty much abandoned. It had picked up a couple of parking tickets, and so the security services went and had a look at it, forced their way into it, and that's what they discovered. So if they had simply moved their car every day, who knows how long they would have been able to get away with this. Okay, so what is physical security? Well, within the context of cybersecurity, physical security is not putting additional lighting in your staff car parks or arranging for security guards to be available to walk staff to their cars late at night. It's not about training your staff in how to de-escalate confrontations in the workplace or how to protect them if they've been hijacked in Colombia. What it is an understanding that if I can get to your equipment physically, then I own it. It's not leaving devices unsecured, so that's not leaving them visible in cars or leaving them behind on the train when you go home. It is about the encryption of devices. It's encrypting not only files but the entire hard drives of mobile devices, and it's also using remote administration tools to recover lost devices or remotely wipe those devices. On to the physical penetration video from Deviant Olin. Deviant is a physical penetration tester based in the United States. He not only conducts physical penetration testing, but also runs seminars teaching others how to test physical security. I reached him through Twitter, and you can too. He graciously allowed me to lift some of the footage of him performing some testing and explaining some penetration techniques from his YouTube videos. This one is from B-Sides in Orlando in 2017, and the video is called I'll Let Myself In, Tactics of Physical Pen Testers.
Watch this again. Literally a piece of trash we found next to a desk. It had like a clamshell packaging for a router, you know, a little Linksys router. We just chopped it up, shoved it in the door, kabam. Look at the size of the hole in that strike plate. Is that an off-the-rack like Home Depot strike plate? No. Why does it look different? You saw it in the video. It's a card reader door. That's an electronic strike. That's a solenoid and actuated strike. There are a whole bunch of different models. And we have actually spoken to integrators and installers, like kind of the lower grade ones, that they're like, oh yeah, such a mess of parts and product out there. We always order the XQ47s because they got that big hole. No matter what doors the client has, it always works. We're like, no, man. That is, you want the right fit to block the little plunger. The plunger has to be held back. Here's a crash bar style door. Oops. Like, it's a crash bar. It's designed for egress. You press it, it will open. That's a bent rod just sticking through the weather stripping. You've seen doors where you kind of like look at them from an angle and you see the light leaking through. I guarantee you can smash through those crash bars very easily. They're rated for only a certain amount of pressure so that a person, this is all code compliance. You don't have 100 pounds of pressure on that crash bar. You have to be able to get out. Even like a child has to be able to get out. Remember, a weather strip seal is not a security seal. Even if you can't see light, like it's just rubber or sometimes fiber. I can usually stick something through, hit that crash bar. What about the bottom of the door? The bottom of the door can have a gap, and we use that to exploit the fact that most door systems have what's called a lever style handle set. When's the last time in a commercial environment you remember seeing like a knob, right? Unless you have some weird legacy building that's got some kind of code variance, you're not seeing knobs in any commercial spaces, schools, offices, you name it. Why? If someone has reduced grip and tactile function in their hand, or if they literally don't have a hand, like maybe they're an amputee, they have to be able to egress and use the door. Hence, exit paddles, or in the case of knobs are all replaced with lever-style handle sets. Very, very lucrative environment for attackers. If there's a gap on the bottom and top of the door, which there is, because the door doesn't drag on the ground, you can use something like an underdoor tool. This is a fella named Tyler Gray. He has like a video series called Gray Man, and he wanted to hear about this attack. He's like, well, how do you do it? And I did, all right, so here, and kabam. And his cameraman actually was like, can we shoot that again? That was way too fast, and I need to know what's happening. So we are using a rod and a line, either Kevlar line or Technora is a nice thread. Some people use metal braided line. I don't like it. It shreds and you get metal splinters in your hand. But you just use this line to deliver the rod right behind the door. You yank down on the line. You're just hitting the inside handle. That's all you're doing. And the inside handle is always going to open the door for code compliance reasons. It will always work. You literally, unless you can have a moving door bottom, you can't protect the bottom of the door. Now, moving door bottoms exist. This is called a dynamic door bottom. A little plunger, this little black piece, presses into the door jamb when the door swings shut. A bar actually drops down. Now, this little animation, this is not a security product, but it shows you the mechanics. This is just sort of an environmental seal for heating and cooling purposes. But they make versions of this, like a much heavier duty one, metal with interlocks. It comes with a contoured floor plate. Again, I don't work for ASSA ABLOY, but ABLOY has a brand of product called PEMCO, P-E-M-K-O. This is the PEMCO 530. And like, you can put this on your server room. When that door shuts, this is a metal bar that drops down, locks into the plate, and like nothing is happening under that door. There's no way to get it up. I have not seen anyone yet making, unless you buy a second one of these on the top, I've never seen a lot of protections for the top of the door. But this, I think, is awesome. So there's a guy, his name is the InfoSec Pope. He's from Utah. You'll sometimes see him and I tweeting, and my ex, Sherry, we all tweet about like EVM chip acceptance, and we're tweeting like, you know, point of sale systems. Well, he also plays with hardware, physical door hardware. He's using, this is for the young ones in the room, this was called film. He literally uses camera film, and he knows because the outside handle is the same height as the inside handle, and he fishes it over the door and yanks on it and just pulls the handle. So under door attacks, over door attacks, it's hard to kind of get around that unless you protect that handle. These are not Hollywood tricks. The idea of using, this tool is called a Proxmark. If you've never worked with one, I mean, a Proxmark is an old tool. The Proxmark 3 has been out forever. The Proxmark 3 RDV2 is the new like hardware version that we use. But all of these are valid attacks. All these are card cloning attacks. If you don't want to attack the credential to the reader, because there are not, like maybe you've got a client using MyFair, like MyFair DesFire, the EV2, EV1 and EV2, not really cracked yet. If you're an HID shop, maybe your vendor sells you HID gear. CEOS is the new card by HID, that's not cracked yet. But the credential to reader doesn't matter if you attack reader to panel. So attacking the backside, attacking the panel bus, this is us installing an electronic sniffer behind the panel, and it's going to just log all the card data, which goes down the wire in plain text. And most of the time, if you've ever, I mean, you got Larry up front, we got a lot of people who know Wiegand, and like, ask us about that. Ask us about how these down the wire, and the fact that we can sniff, clone, replay, DOS it with a little sniffer that Bobbitt can install in a matter of seconds. And you'll notice he's not going to cut these wires and re-terminate them. The reader is not interrupted from reader to panel right now. The reader stays online. This is an inline insulation displacement connectors, little IDC connectors that you just punch down, and then you'll see lights light up. It's only 4 wires. It's got voltage. It's got data 1, data 0, and like online. This, by the way, this is the ESP key, because the new ESP Wi-Fi chip, it's like the size of a postage stamp, this whole circuit board. We connect to this with Wi-Fi. We don't even walk up near the reader anymore. We can just be in the building, find the hotspot that it's quietly broadcasting, or it'll connect to us. And then Bobbitt can look at all the credentials. He'll be like, oh, look at this one. So this credential hit this door, and this door at 2 in the morning. That's a guard. Who wants to be the guard? You know? Or you can just press replay and just open all doors.
So is this a risk in healthcare? Well, yes, it is. I mean, healthcare and community services have very high traffic areas where people are in and out all the time, with plenty of opportunity for someone to slip into a secure area. Now, what if I let myself in the back door of one of your sites and install a rogue AP in the ceiling? Then it's just like the Russian car outside The Hague, except I don't have to move it every 2 hours. Okay, so a question. Why is this a problem? Okay, so it goes back to the idea that if I can get to your device, then I own it. And if that device is a server, I can reboot the server and install some malware onto it, and then exit the building before you know I'm there. If I reboot your server at night, who's even there to notice? The numb on duty might notice, because they're the most likely to be sitting in front of a device in the middle of the night, but they'll typically wait and see if the service comes back up. And if it does, well, then no problem. They might not even mention it. Let's assume that you have the unlikely scenario running here where you actually have 24-hour-a-day support. In the middle of the night, it's going to be skeleton staff. They're going to be at some central location away from your remote sites. Somebody has to be alerted, and then they have to arrange for somebody to go to the server to find out what's going on. And by then, the hacker's left. But I don't even have to get to your service. Really, all I have to do is get access to your buildings. It doesn't have to be your main site that I break into, because, as mentioned earlier, everything is connected. I only have to get access to your least secure facility. It doesn't have to be a hospital with an A&E running all night. It might be a community centre in Launceston, which only opens 3 days a week. Okay, so let's consider the Internet of Things for a moment. And that's where you get your smart homes and having multiple devices. All of these devices talk to each other. You know, your fridge is talking to your car, and it's watching your Netflix while you're not home. You know, playing with your garage door, open, shut, open, shut, open, shut. And this is all still very new technology. If you like, it's still very much the wild west of IT, where standards are still being defined, and there's a rush to get new products out into the market for consumers. And this results in oftentimes insufficient testing and updating of those devices. Default passwords are left on those devices. And don't forget, these are connecting to your network. You've got unsecure communications between whatever the device is and the device on your network. Essentially, this is opening your network up to a hacker attack simply because these devices have not yet been secured correctly. And it might be that they can be secured correctly, but because they're consumer grade devices, typically somebody's going to get this thing home, plug it into their network, turn it on, woohoo! You know, my garage door goes up and down. You know, why is my fridge talking to my car? There's very little thought goes into the configuration of these devices by the consumer once they're at home and plugged in. So I recorded a video a couple of days ago where I used the internet to search for and connect to a web-connected camera. So while this isn't a big deal, connecting to a camera over the internet, I did it with almost zero effort, in no time, and I was able to remotely connect to a device on somebody else's network. So ask yourself, is their security good or is it bad? Once an attacker has access to your system, they'll then set about doing some reconnaissance to try to find out as much about your environment as they can. One method of reconnaissance is a thing called Google dorking, which is where a hacker takes advantage of Google's lesser known search parameters to yield some interesting results. For example, when we're talking about the Internet of Things and those devices that might get put onto your network but not completely secured or only partially implemented, by Google dorking for certain strings and configuration files, we can uncover information about those devices because they've connected not only to your network but also to the internet, thereby potentially exposing your network to the internet in an unsecure way. So for the purposes of a demonstration, let's do some Google dorking. You may have restricted the results that Google returns by adding filters for file types, such as only returning PDF files. And the way to do that is very simply by typing file type :PDF. So whatever query I have now will only return PDF files. So if I want to find a PDF on lawnmowers, we can see that I'm only returning results for lawnmowers, and the only file type is a PDF file. So Honda lawnmowers opens up PDF brochure. So essentially this is what Google dorking is doing. It's using these lesser known filters to find information in novel ways. So by dorking for specific strings related to Internet of Things devices, we might be able to find those devices that are exposed on the internet and insecure. So the way that we'd do that is by typing the exact string that that device would expose to the internet, and we can find it by using the inTitle parameter. Okay, so Google has detected that the kind of searching that I'm doing at the moment is potentially what a hacker would do, and they are just checking to make sure that I'm a real person and accepting the liability for uncovering anybody's secrets. I'm not going to do anything that'll uncover any passwords or attempt to break into any secure systems. So I'm not worried about this. I'm just going to say I'm not a robot and continue. Okay, so as we can see, this has returned several instances of these webcams, and we could click on these pages and check them out if we wanted to. These are all Internet of Things devices. If we, just to really prove the point, scroll down, London, Ontario weather, see what's going on. Okay, so it's night time in Canada at the moment. The point is, through the internet, I've connected to this camera. Close it, it's not my camera. And if I was a hacker, having access to that camera, I would now be able to launch subsequent investigations to find more information out about that device and the network behind it. Well, this is a very colourful picture. So hand in hand with the Internet of Things is this concept of OSINT, or Open Source Intelligence. And what this refers to is the information that you've put out there on the internet about yourself. So what it's not is all of the information in every single database that you've ever supplied your personal information for, such as the taxation department. Your information there is probably fairly well secured. But there are a lot of other places where you've supplied personal information that can be easily searched through the internet using standard tools like Google or Bing. And what OSINT is the technique of pulling all of those disconnected pieces of information about you together to build a vulnerability profile of your web footprint. So typically a hacker during the reconnaissance phase is going to start with one piece of information that they can find out easily. And that might be your email address. And from there, they'll search these other publicly available places where you've put your email address and see what other pieces of information they can find out. They might come up with your middle name or your birthday if it's Facebook. They might come up with your work history for the last 5 years if they've accessed LinkedIn. And slowly, by digging and searching and using heuristic searching so they don't search for your exact name, for example, they might search for your initials and your surname. They'll slowly build up this picture and gather all this information about you from all of these different sources. And then they'll have enough to be able to perhaps launch some spear phishing directed specifically at you. So, in conclusion, be aware of current events. We talked about COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter, but what about Donald Trump and the upcoming elections in America? You need to make a conscious decision to keep information to yourself. Be suspicious, especially of any unsolicited communications. Do the simple things to keep secure. Okay, are there any other questions? Yep. Okay. With the card readers, going back to Deviant Olam's attack. Okay, so the question is, how do you secure your card readers against that vampire attack that they showed us in the video? Deviant actually mentions this at the end of his video, so go and watch the longer video, you get a better answer. But apparently there is now a secure protocol that encrypts the traffic all the way from the reader back to the security server. Anything else? No? Okay, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time.